Welcome to the Reading Nook. So here in this little segment on my channel is the Reading Nook, where we are reading A Cat's Chance in Hell by Sharon Hannaford at this moment in time. So make sure you've got your drinks and you're good to go. Without choking on your drinks, of course. So I'm going to pop up some pictures of the canvases that we've worked on so far, and all details of current projects are in the comment section below. Big shout out to Sharon Hannaford. Thank you so much for giving me your permission to read this on my channel. It's been great fun, especially the accents. I'm so sorry. As you saw at the start as well, there's a warning. It's for mature audiences, so please, no kids. But other than that, I hope you enjoy. Bye!
Chapter 14. Her phone was ringing. Again. At least it waited until after sunrise, she thought grumpily, as she noticed sunlight peeking in through the slits of inner curtains. She grabbed the phone, taking in the bedside clock with the sleep-blurred eyes. 9:18 glowed the bright red numbers. She squinted at the caller ID. Donovan. Damn. Donovan was one of her oldest and most loyal clients, a film producer who often employed her services as an animal trainer. Usually she was contacted by underlings on a movie, but Donovan always called her personally. They developed a good working relationship over the past few years, and she always tried to help him out if she could. He was openly gay and genuinely a nice guy if you were on his good side. Heaven help you if you pissed him off, though. She sat up and cleared her throat before answering. "Hey, the Dan," she said cheerfully, assuming her brisk, teasing but professional voice that she used on clients. As a hunter for the Malus Ventura, she was known as short-tempered, rude, and abrasive. She allowed her natural temperament to show among her supernatural peers, but in her business she was all smooth, confident professionalism, and after so many years of wearing it, her business mask now felt comfortable and familiar. "Gabrielle, my sweet," he greeted her, his voice, his natural effervescence clear even across a phone line. "How's my little ray of sunshine this morning?" Gabby groaned. He knew full well that she was not a morning person. "I haven't even had my first cup of coffee yet, so tread carefully," she warned in a mock growl. Donovan chuckled on the other side of the phone as she absent-mindedly petted Razor, who had head-butted the side of her face, almost giving her a black eye. "And what was my little tiger up to last night that she's extra grumpy this morning?" His tone suggested she had been up to something naughty, and he wanted details. Gabby let his imagination go wild at what she got up to last night that often caused such bleary-eyed mornings. Rather he thought she was a wild party girl living the single life than he find out the monster-encrusted truth. She climbed out of bed, wrapping a robe around herself one-handed and grimacing at the uncomfortable stiffness in her shoulder and ribs. "Now that'd be telling," she retorted. "Good girl doesn't kiss and tell now, does she?" Donovan chuckled even louder. "Not sure I'd put you in the good girl category," he retaliated. Gabby stifled a yawn and headed into the kitchen where she could smell a pot of coffee on the brew. Rose had obviously heard her take the call. "Oh, I'm good," she drawled. "I'm really, really good." She found Rose in the kitchen and gave her a quick kiss on the cheek as she headed to the coffee pot like a magus who'd spotted a hedge. "I don't doubt that for a moment, Angel," he countered in mock seriousness. Gabby smiled wryly. Donovan was a wonderful flirt. I take it you didn't just phone to check up on my personal life?" she prompted him. "No, unfortunately there's no rest for the wicked, as they say," he replied, sighing dramatically. "The scriptwriter for my latest movie has sprung a fight scene on me involving a Black Panther, so I'm in dire need of your rather unique talents." Gabby took a much-needed gulp of hot, strong coffee and headed to her office. "Let me just get my computer awake," she told him, hitting the power button and sticking into her chair. The computer purred to life as she opened her diary to today's date. "Okay," she said, putting Donovan on speakerphone. "What dates are we looking at? Do you have animals lined up, or do I need to track them down?" It was standard practice to use more than one animal on a movie set. The animals could only be used in short bursts, and in the case of large animals, if one got particularly grumpy, it was safer to give it a break and use another. "It's a fairly short scene, so we're hoping to do it in a single day," Donovan replied. "We have animals available, but there is a catch." He sounded a little apprehensive now. "Just spit it out, Dan," Gabby said calmly. She was used to the film industry after working in it for the past 5 years. The word impossible was not supposed to exist in the movie world. Well, we need you today. I know what short notice this is, and I know you have other clients, but we can only have the Panthers today. The regular trainer was mauled by one of them over the weekend. He just got a little scratch and a single bite, nothing serious, but no other trainer will go near him now. Our stuntman is prepared to go ahead with the scene if you take over as the trainer. He appears to think, as do I, that you have an uncanny knack with big cats and isn't worried about them mauling him if you're around. He thinks the other trainer did something to piss off the cats and they were just putting him in his place. Gabby sighed. She didn't like to upstage other trainers. It just drew too much attention to her abilities. But he was right. The stuntman would be perfectly safe if she was there. Let me guess. The stuntman is Derek, she said with weary resignation. She could really do without dealing with Derek today. He was a really nice guy. In fact, he was the whole package. Rugged good looks, charm, mouth-watering physique. He was even single and had shown obvious interest in Gabby from the moment they met on a movie set about 2 years ago. She couldn't deny that he appealed to her on many levels, most of them physical, but he had one major shortcoming in her books. He was human. Fully, completely, and unchangingly human. It made a relationship with him impossible. I'll owe you for a lifetime, Donovan willed, obviously sensing her wavering capitalization. I hope you know that you're the only client I would consider doing this for. You will have my eternal gratitude and undying admiration. He persevered, sensing victory. I'm sure I got those from you the last time you needed me on such short notice, Gabby replied archly. You can never have too much eternal gratitude and undying admiration, he intoned in a serious voice. But suddenly his voice turned viciously mischievous. But just to prove my sentiments, how about I throw in a dinner at Olivia's with unlimited choice from the wine list? Now that was just plain dirty. Gabby chuckled wryly. He had played his trump card, but she would make his credit card cry for mercy before she was finished with the wine list at Olivia's. Time and place, she asked, now resigned to the prospect of a full day's work. Oh, and you better get Russell there too. I'm on light work for the next 2 weeks, so I'll need some muscles to help out. What did you do this time? A frisky thoroughbred. She casually used the same lie she had fed to the maitre d' at Olivia's. Bust ribs and a colophone. Donovan didn't bother telling her to stay home if she was injured. He knew better. I'll get Russell to come here, hell or high water, he promised, and gave her the address of the film set downtown, asking her to be there as soon as she could make it. Gabby sighed off, telling him she'd see him in an hour, then drained her coffee, grabbed a lollipop from the jar on her desk and headed for the shower. She made one stop off on her way to the film set, at her local Dunkin' Donuts, for 1 extra large caramel latte, 2 breakfast bagels, and 3 dozen donuts. Creme-filled, choc-frosted, glazed, sprinkled, sugar-powdered decadence. She hoped there would be a few left for the crew when she got to set. She seemed to have an even bigger craving for sugar today than usual, so big her whole body felt like one big itch that needed to be scratched. She wrote it off to the injuries and lack of sleep, but it still niggled something in the back of her mind. Much to her disgruntlement, all the donuts were still in the boxes when she pulled into the set car park. She discovered that it was annoyingly difficult to eat and drive at the same time when you have a broken collarbone. She'd resorted to wolfing down her coffee and bagels when she stopped at a red light. By a lucky hiccup of fate, Russell pulled into the parking lot a few seconds after her. She greeted him by depositing the 3 boxes of donuts into his arms, opening the top one and helping herself to a double cocoa cream puff. Morning, Russ Bear, she said cheerfully around a mouthful of donut. She liked to tease the short, friendly-looking man. With his unruly, wavy, russet red hair, he reminded her of that annoying range of fluffy teddy bears that was a requisite purchase for any new baby. He was a shifter by nature, and as such appeared vastly younger than he actually was. Gabby knew he was well into his 30s, but he appeared barely 20. They made a good team on film sets, as he knew her true nature, and he was able to help her cover some of her unnatural abilities. He was quick to warn her when she was overstepping the boundaries of human capabilities. It made things much easier for her not to have to constantly hide everything from her assistant. He was also exceptionally good with animals. Not that he had any kind of supernatural control over him. His talent stemmed purely from experience and a deep innate understanding of animal nature. Hey, Archangel, was his repulsive. referring both to her hunter nickname as well as to the belief of Magi and shifters that the Archangel Gabriel, along with many other biblical figures, were actually female and named Gabrielle before the Catholic Church stepped in and patronised everything. Guardian Angel of Death. An interesting oxymoron, she mused to herself. Be nice, she warned, or I won't let you have any of those donuts you're carrying. I take it the fantastical stories that have been flying around the community are true, then? He said with one russet eyebrow raised as he watched her tuck her right arm into an unobtrusive black sling. The community being the collective name given to the wider family of shifters and magi of the city who all gossiped like fifth-grader girls about everything. Gabby pulled a face. I'm not sure what fantastical stories have been flying around, so you'll need to tell me the stories before I confirm or deny them. How about you just tell me the story straight, and I can fill you in on the embellishments at the end. Later, she said, as they rounded the corner and entered the melee of people and cables and lights and sound equipment and props. For now, the story is I was injured by a horse. No one has any real details, so I'll make it up as I need to, she told him in a low voice. Collarbone and ribs? He asked astutely, as he watched her grimace when a grapher spun around and yelled at a technician. She had to dart to the side to avoid collision. She grunted in agreement. And the burn on your cheek? How are you going to explain that one? Shit, she swore softly, covering the offending mark with her hand. She'd forgotten about it. I'll have to get to a bathroom with some concealer. Russell shook his head pityingly. You haven't been around humans enough recently. You're out of practice, he admonished. But don't panic. Head for the makeup caravan just over there. I have a friend there who will help. She's part of the community. They put their heads down, hoping to avoid anyone they knew, and darted into the caravan marked makeup extras. When Gabby and Russell emerged from the caravan 5 minutes later, no one looked twice at Gabby's cheek, and Jenny was happily devouring a donut. It didn't take them long to find Donovan, and for the boxes of donuts to be received with grunts of approval. Donovan greeted her enthusiastically with a kiss on each cheek, and she mentally thanked Russell again to remind her about the burn mark. Russell set the donuts on the catering table set up for the senior crew, grabbed one himself and headed back to the parking lot to collect his and Gabby's gear. Gabby would sit in on a quick set meeting between directors, actors and camera crew and stunt crew to find out exactly what was required from the Panthers for the day. Then she'd meet Russell at the animal enclosure and spend some time getting to know the Panthers before shooting started. She poured herself another cup of coffee from the catering table and was just stuffing a third donut into her mouth when her glance strayed across set and met silver-grey eyes across the room. Derek. She'd thought that perhaps having been in Julius's and Alexander's presence recently, Derek would be a pale, bland comparison, but there was just something so vibrantly alive within him. A spark of humour glinting in the liquid mercury depths of his eyes, a supreme confident maleness about him, that he could never ever be considered pale or bland. She could hear the females in the vicinity teetering amongst themselves as he strode through their midst. A few of the more confident ones stared at him boldly, trying to catch his eye. If he noticed any of them, he didn't show it. His slow, easy smile was all for Gabby. Damn, she sighed inwardly. This is going to be a long day. Into the coffee and sweet stuff already, Bradford? He teased her in his warm baritone, one dark eyebrow quirked in amusement. A slight smile played at the edges of his central mouth. Not even the slight scar running down his top lip could detract from his blatant sex appeal. The smile vanished as soon as he got close enough to notice the sling. A frown creased his forehead, and his molten grey eyes narrowed. Morning, boo, she greeted him cheerfully, interrupting whatever he'd been about to say. She'd been going for brisk and cheerful. Why it sounded to her ears as though her voice had just come out low and husky and inviting. He paused for a second, annoyance at the nickname narrowing his eyes. The boo Derek thing got him every time, but his easy smile was back a second later. Gabby resolutely pasted her teasing, sardonic mask on her face. He was now standing less than a foot away from her, and he smelled absolutely delectable. She found herself wanting to run her tongue across his smooth skin of his neck, just below his ear, to see if he tasted as good as he smelled. Ugh, she thought wildly, straining to keep her face impassive. What was wrong with her this morning? Ready to wrestle with the man-eaters this morning? She asked nonchalantly, forcing bored indifference into her tone. It was taking real effort with him this close to her. Was she really that tired, she wondered? Or was a lack of sex life catching up to her? First, I'm going to wrestle one of those sinful donuts into my stomach, and then I'm going to wrestle what happened to your arm out of you, he stated matter-of-factly, reaching around her to open one of the boxes of donuts. After the set meeting, Derek was sent off to makeup and costume, and Gabrielle hurriedly escaped to the panther enclosure before he could stop and question her. When she got to the enclosure, Russell had already laid out all their gear and was talking to the panthers through the fencing. Gabby took some quiet time to sit in the enclosure with the panthers and get to know them. Roughly petting the two panthers, Gabby found herself wondering how supernaturals would be treated if they ever came out to the general public. Would the world consider it typecasting to use a real werewolf to play a werewolf in a movie? How many computer and animatronic geeks would be out of work if producers discovered the existence of shapeshifters and magi? Would the world still consider supernaturals supervillains and burn them at public stakes, or lock them in a macabre vision of a zoo? Or would it welcome them and protect them, treating them like superstars and celebrities? It would create an uproar of unprecedented proportions, that was for sure. She was enjoying the quiet time with the panthers. For her, being around animals was like a warm, candlelit bubble bath for the soul. Washed away the grim reality of her other life. Interacting with them was the most beautiful part of her birthright, a counterweight to the ugliness of the violence and destruction necessitated by her crusade against evil. The male, Tynan, was just coming out of adolescence and was trying to assert himself as dominant. It was Tynan who had bitten the other trainer, so it was merely a case of the panther testing his new power and maturity. Gabby had to put him down in his place twice, but after that he had settled down and submitted to her dominance without any further animosity. The female, Kiara, was a real sweetie, and within moments of Gabby's entrance into the cage had settled down with her head down on Gabby's lap, demanding attention like a domesticated cat. Although Gabby loved all the big cat species, lions had become her favourite after spending several months helping out at a lion sanctuary in South Africa. She still got regular emails from the sanctuary updating her on their lives, and she celebrated every success they had and grieved for every failure. Gabby, Russell's voice broke into her reverie. The set's ready, we could take the cats through. Kyle was just warming up in the gym. He wanted to stretch out some kinks and then relax with 20 lengths of the pool before going to HQ to see what the roster was for the next few nights. As he got into the position at the first piece of apparatus, his phone rang. He grimaced but jumped up to grab it, ignoring annoyed looks thrown his way by other patrons. He was surprised when he saw the caller ID. "Alex?" he asked by way of greeting. He walked down the main gym area into the deserted corridor. "Kyle?" Alexander's clipped voice was unremarkable. "You're still awake?" he asked, confused. "I am indeed," the vampire confirmed. Kyle could picture the accompanying smirk. "And actually, I was about to go and get some rest, but wanted to give you a heads up and see if you was free to join us on a reconnaissance run tonight." Kyle felt an icy tingle of excitement flood him. "You found something?" He moved further down the corridor as a pair of women came out of the saunas and paused to chat. "Sebastian has an address for us to investigate. Might not be anything exciting, but Julius and I will take a small group and check it out at sunset. You want in?" "Of course I want in. I'll have to check with HQ though. I can let you know in an hour or so." Then he had another thought. "What about Gabby? Have you called her yet?" "No, I contacted you first. Julius was concerned that she needed rest and recovery time, but we thought we'd let you make the final call on that one." Carl chewed his lip. "She texted me earlier to say she's working on a movie set today. She definitely hasn't had enough recovery time. If we can get things wrapped up early enough, she wouldn't even know we've been out until it's too late." He said the words confidently enough to Alexander, but he knew she was going to be seriously pissed once she found out they'd left her out of a mission. He would deal with that later. "Fine," Alexander agreed. "If you're coming with us, be at the estate before sunset." After some discussion with Russell and Donovan, Gabby decided to use Tynan for the close-up shots of the panther tracking and then sprinting off a ledge because he was bigger and looked more dangerous, and Kiara for the shots of the tussle between Panther and the hero because she was the less dominant and more playful of the two. Because Gabby didn't want Derek and Tynan to have male dominant standoff, she'd have to keep the two males as far apart as she could, and would still probably have to use subtle mind control to keep Tynan in check. Thank the Lord and Lady they hadn't tried this without her and Russell. She'd have to have a word with Tynan's owners and get them to pull him from movie work until he got over his teenage nonsense and settled into responsible adulthood. Gabby let Russell do all of the rehearsal shots with Kiara to make sure the cameras and lighting were perfectly placed and everyone knew what to do and where to go. Derek practiced his tussle with Kiara and spent some extra time petting her and making friends, while Gabby occupied Tynan making him practice his leaps and trying out a selection of lures to find the one he liked best. They would use this to initiate his hunting behaviour for the stalking panther shots. It was well past lunchtime before Donovan called a break, having got all the shots they needed from Tynan and most of the ones of Derek and Kiara. He would now go over what they shot, and they could fill in any gaps with Kiara after lunch. Tynan had begun to get belligerent and annoyed, and Gabby was struggling to keep him calm. While Kiara took everything in her stride, an utter pro, Gabby decided and a pleasure to work with. She found herself getting annoyed with Tynan towards the end of the shoot, which wasn't like her at all. Normally the animals calmed and centered her even if they were being difficult. She was having to work hard at keeping a cool head today. At lunch she headed for the canteen and immersed herself in a group of technicians and crew that she'd worked with before. They were all clamoring to know how she injured herself this time. She embellished her story a little, blaming it on a problematic thoroughbred stallion who'd thrown a fit about getting on a plane. She just about finished the concocted story when she detected the subtle, spicy, masculine scent of Derek moving up behind her. She stopped herself spinning to meet him and tried to carry on the conversation as though he wasn't there. Might have worked if the rest of the crowd hadn't taken the hint of his stormy grey eyes and suddenly remembered they had things to do elsewhere. Gabby turned around in resignation. "A panicked horse, huh?" he asked sceptically. "More stubborn and obnoxious than panicked, actually," she corrected mildly. "You know the type." Derek raised one eyebrow and, without looking away from her eyes, reached to grab her right hand. "This doesn't look much like rope or nylon burn to me," he said as he turned her hand over and brought it up to the light where they could both see the healing skin on the tips of her fingers. "And you don't normally wear so much makeup. What are you hiding on your cheek?" "Damn," she cursed silently. He was one of the most observant humans she'd ever met. She shouldn't have pulled off her gloves to have lunch. Not that anyone else on set would know the difference between rope burn and acid burn. Only Derek. He was still holding her hand, waiting for an answer. "Kitchen accident," she lied smoothly. "Hot oils burned like Hades." He looked even more skeptical. "Kitchen accident?" he asked incredulously. "Since when do you cook?" "And now you know why I don't cook," she retorted sharply. He was just going to have to be happy with that. She couldn't exactly tell him the truth, though she always got the impression he knew there was something else up with her. He was always suspicious of her injuries. He seemed to know she was lying about them. Odd, but irrelevant. If she ever told him the truth, he would probably have her committed to the nearest asylum. His face turned pensive, as though trying to make up his mind about something. Gabby was searching desperately for Russell to help extricate her from the conversation. "It's not a boyfriend who helped the kitchen accident along, is it?" he asked at last, his jaw set in a tight line. "If it is, you need to tell me now and stop protecting him." Gabby was so thrown by the question that it took a few moments for his meaning to draw on her. She almost laughed. Only the restrained anger burning in his eyes stopped her. She had to appreciate his concern. If she looked at the overall picture with an outsider's eye, she would have to admit that a constant litany of injuries could well be taken as proof of exactly that. But honestly, did Derek not know her at all? The concept of a boyfriend lifting his hand to her was beyond ridiculous. Kyle would fall on the floor laughing at the thought. But Derek meant well. He was simply worried about her, so she couldn't be rude. She gently extricated her hand from his and laid it on his forearm. "I don't have an abusive boyfriend, Derek, I promise," she assured him. "I don't have a boyfriend, full stop." Okay, so maybe she shouldn't have told him that, but she needed to get some of the truth between them or he'd never let the subject go. "You've met Razor," she reminded him. He'd come to her house once to drop off some equipment she'd lent him, and Razor had kept him from entering the house until Gabby locked him in her room. "Do you really think he'd let anyone hurt me?" What about that Carl guy? He asked, refusing to be pacified that easily. I don't want to be rude about your friends, but there's something off about that guy. Gabby sighed, tired of the subject now, her annoyance rising again. Carl is one of my oldest and most trusted friends. He's like a brother to me. She couldn't say that he would never raise his hand against her, because that would be lying again. They regularly hit each other during training sessions, so she had to try another angle. And besides, do I really strike you as the type of person who would take abuse from a man? Considering what you know about martial arts I've studied, does it seem likely? Derek stared at her for a moment, looking deep into her eyes, and then he suddenly relented, nodding in agreement. You're right. As tiny as you are, I can't see too many men getting the best of you physically. I just worry, you know? His voice went a little quiet and distant. I didn't see the signs early enough with my sister, only when the bastard put her in hospital. His eyes had turned sad. I'm sorry about your sister, Gabby said quietly. Is she alright now? Yeah, she's okay. Not much better than okay, but alive and healing. When that bastard gets out of prison in a few years, he and I are going to have a long meeting in an isolated wood. Gabby got an evil twinkle in her eye at his comment. Let me know if you need any help getting into that meeting, she said innocently. I have friends in low places who would be more than willing to help. The easy smile was back in place on Derek's face, the tension almost gone. You bet, he agreed. Might even be more fun to watch a woman kick his ass than do it myself. Now you're talking my language, she grinned evilly. I might even leave a piece of him for you. The conversation ended to the call returned to set. Derek seemed far more at ease now that they've cleared the air of her injuries, and shooting went smoothly. After checking in at HQ, clearing his involvement in Julius's mission with Byron, Carl drove back to his apartment. He made some lunch, put his phone on silent, and crashed on his couch to catch a few hours' sleep before sunset. He had a feeling it was going to be another long night. As he was drifting off, he remembered he hadn't checked in with Gabby since that morning. She probably wondered what he was up to. He made a mental note to text her when he woke up. What he hadn't remembered was to set an alarm. When he woke up hours later and realised it was only a few minutes to sunset, he grabbed the van's keys and dashed out of the apartment, completely forgetting his phone. The rest of the afternoon went by in a blur, and Gabby was surprised to note that at 5 o'clock she hadn't heard any contact from Carl, Byron or Julius. She checked her phone regularly, but only a few clients had left voicemails or texts. She excused herself quickly from the set after wrapping up with the cats, kissing Donovan affectionately and threatening to take him up on his offer of dinner very soon. Russell helped her drag all the gear back to the cars, and she thanked him profusely for the help, promising to keep in touch. She wearily climbed into the driver's seat and brought the Mustang roaring to life. Then she activated her hands-free kit and dialed Carl's number. Half an hour and half a dozen calls later, she had ascertained that neither Carl nor Julius were answering their phones, and that Carl had asked off for hunter duty tonight for business with Julius. Strange how no one had bothered to let her know what was going on. She felt tendrils of anger blossom inside her as she pulled the Mustang into her driveway. She checked her answering machine and email quickly to make sure Carl hadn't left her a message, then fed Razor and Slinky and made herself a cup of coffee and a sandwich. She ate her snack quickly, trying to contain her irrational fury. After an hour of waiting and wondering what the hell was going on, she decided she couldn't stay in the house another second. She went to change out of her professional work clothes, pulling on jeans, boots, and black halter neck top. She was just strapping on Nex's sheath when she caught her reflection in the hall mirror and noticed how the top showed off the spectacular bruising on her collarbone. She grimaced and added a lightweight leather jacket to her ensemble, grabbed her car keys, phone, and left the house. Thanks for joining me. Bye.